That makes me sad.
Hello, hi, we are live finally. I'm so sorry that it took us a little while to go live. Yeah, we're here now.
Good to be here. Yes.
The much awaited Naked Truth.
There you go.
We're in the third series of Naked Truth now. So that's
how long's the series? A year?
No, we don't get that many. No, we don't. We get roughly. We ask about 6-7 speakers to come on per series.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Because I think you can make it focused and a bit more specific.
Yeah, I like a bit of focus myself. I like to know, you see what we do at RPM. It's kind of like, all right, next week and next week and next week. Whereas we were going to do one show a month. And even that, I was thinking 12 things. We'll run out of stuff after 2 or 3 years. But you don't. There's always stuff to chat about, isn't there?
Yeah. This is it. Yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about the nutrients in pet food. And yeah, it's great to have you here, Conor.
Yeah, love it, Caroline. It's great to talk to a peer. I love what you do, and it's always enjoyable having these conversations. I always come out armed with ideas. Already have one juicy one, thanks to you at the very start there. So yeah, can't wait.
That's cool. So yeah, I also want to talk about calcium a bit because that's been my bugbear for last sort of 18 months, really. Yeah, maybe nearly pushing 2 years, where I've really tried to find the best option for those pet guardians that maybe for whatever reason aren't ready for raw but still want to feed fresh food. So they're cooking it. And the calcium and the mineral side of things, obviously it's just calcium, they work synergistically, these minerals, but getting that bone content that isn't bone content back in, it is a big task. It is a big task. And if you've got pets with allergies and they can't have certain bone meals because it's created with the protein that they have allergy to, then you're faced with even more. So we will go through that definitely. And taking questions. Now I'm going to have to watch it also, well, not watch it, but at least have my phone by me. And we can see if there's any questions. That's probably the best way for you guys to ask questions. So do post comments and questions for us, and we will get to them. Doris is already with us. That's fantastic. We've got people already with us. So that's really great. Let's see. So Doris says hello. Sam says hi. Hello, hi, both of you.
Hello, Sam and Doris.
We also want to talk about our new supplement called The Answer, which puts nutrients into 80-10 and pure meat meals. So very applicable that it should be launched last weekend at the Pat's trade show. And now here we are talking about nutrients. So it almost makes you wonder whether it was meant to be for tonight, not for like 5-6 weeks ago when we tried to do the live. So we can talk about this, which is our new supplement product that I have been working on for quite a while, really. And what I would really love is to have this kind of thing, but also with the minerals, including the calcium in it. But as I said, I've yet to find one that I can actually hand on heart say that is fully bioavailable and allowed in pet food. That's the key. There's lots of bioavailable calciums, but they are not allowed under the EU directives of what's allowed to be put into pet feed. So that's where we're faced with a lot of issues. And I know you've spoken about minerals before in pet food, Conor, haven't you? Yeah,
just the whole... I think I like reminding people that minerals are like inorganic, so they're not from the land of the living, unlike vitamins and a few other things that the body recognizes. So the gut membrane doesn't like inorganic elements. It doesn't trust them. So normally minerals come across the gut membrane barrier holding the hand of a carbon molecule or a polysaccharide or sugar. And they're holding the hand, and the body says, protein or sugar, I know you, come on into the party. And the security guards are saying, who's your man? Oh, he's with me. And in goes a bit of calcium or zinc or iron. And that's kind of how that kind of osmosis happens through the gut membrane. And naturally in food, all minerals are chelated to this carbon or sugar or whatever, and they're brought across the barrier, like you'd find in milk, to vegetables, to fruit, to meat. Very, very normal stuff. The problem is that pet food companies, particularly dry pet food companies, ultra processed pet food companies, know a lot of nutrients are going to be missing from their nutrient bereft ingredients, and so they think they can George Jetson pill their way out of it, even though that was as ridiculous as the cartoon in the 60s. And we know it's, people in the space station still can't live like that. And so they put in things like zinc oxide, iron oxide, magnesium sulfate. And these are conical flask versions of the minerals that are found in nature. They're not chelated to the sugar or protein. And so they're a very poor substitute for the real thing. And dogs, in studies of almost every single one of those aforementioned minerals, don't absorb hardly any of that. And so what they do, they just use more of that mineral and just think, oh, sure, it's harmless. It doesn't matter how much zinc or iron is in the product. And yet that's not true. We know the more iron supplements you take, the sicker you're going to be. Things do come across the barrier. They're not absorbed the same way, and all sorts of issues. But the main thing is you just don't get the same level of absorption of these minerals. So minerals need to come from food. That is the best way. And so like your product, and that's kind of what people need to be considering, as opposed to the stuff that you see on the back, complicated terms on the back of pet food packets. So they're the conical flask versions that are a very poor substitute. Studies of those minerals show they're dire. They're not effective at all, and have side effects. So vitamins, slightly better. You can factory make vitamins and they cross the barrier very easy. And if you thought you needed a vitamin for some reason, vitamins can be useful. But minerals, you wouldn't see a review of the mineral studies out there that comes across anything on positive on anything. And you've hit the biggest one there at the start, is carbon, or is calcium. Big problems with the whole calcium nonsense that people believe you can take supplements. It's not the same as a food source.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to sort of strip back, you said so many things there, and hopefully I remember them all. So my new thing, as well as saying you are what you eat, and Nick's new thing, you are what you eat. My new thing is you are what you absorb.
Yeah.
Because you can eat and eat, but if you're not absorbing it sufficiently, it's not going to get to where it needs to go. And this is what happens, very sadly. This is what you're talking about. So for those of you that are watching, who have we got on? Brett, definitely. This is part what Conor's talking about is facilitated diffusion. So we've been talking about that in our digestive anatomy.
Nice.
We were talking about it last night. So what essentially is happening is the chelation is encouraging and helping the nutrient to pass over, so that it actually gets into the body, into the blood, and then it can be taken to where it's needed. So it doesn't happen as well with minerals in the body unless they're attached to something else. So what we're finding, of course, that the pet food companies kind of the route that I've actually looked into is that a lot of them, okay, we could make the argument that some of them aren't really checking and looking, they're just putting in what they're told to put in, or they just go to
pick a box
company and say, please, can you create me something, or can you put something in that's just a multivitamin and mineral. But their hands are a bit tied. This is what I'm finding, because the guidelines for pet feed don't allow a lot of the absorbable vitamin and minerals. So they're kind of over a barrel in terms of what they're allowed to put in. And I know some companies are making more of an effort. And it's interesting because the more you get into this kind of thing, you can look at a bag of food and you say, I know where they get their premix from. I know where they get their premix from. And you can see who buys their premix from where, because it's pretty much identical in terms of the chelation that they're choosing to use, or what type of, say, zinc, as you said, zinc oxide.
Yeah, zinc sulfate or zinc oxide. One is ever so slightly better in dogs than chickens or whatever. Yeah, so
run of the mill, and not at all individualized to the dog specifically.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about fresh food, whether that's lightly cooked or raw, you can individualize it to your dog, and that's the beauty of it. You're relying on a bit of a lottery otherwise in terms of what they're going to absorb and what's even going to be in there. Yeah, they buy those mixes in. So as Hill's Pet Food, the vet's favorite product worldwide, so it must be the best, one of the best, or they wouldn't back it, would they, in the interest of doing no harm. So this day, one factory by Hill's Pet Food sent out 22 million cans of pet food, complete pet food, without checking the vitamin content of a single one of them, not one. And they said, oh well, this is a procedural issue. We did the vitamin mix people that we bought it from, they made the mistake, it wasn't us. And we're like, no, forget all that.
Are you saying you don't test your products when they come out the other end? You've got billions and billions of revenue, and you don't think to just test one test of one single product, 22 million cans. You don't produce that in a day. So excess vitamin D went in, Costosaurus. Like, you know, I just think it's a little bit hypocritical that these companies will turn around and say, well, we're not fully sure about the nutrient contents in your DIY food you make for your child or dog or whatever. And it's like, but you don't know what the vitamin content is of your own food. You have a Excel spreadsheet and you assume that the ingredients you're putting in contain the nutrients you're talking about, and they haven't been sitting in an open back truck as all the corn is allowed to be and wheat for pet food, and the vitamin mix was right from the company. They don't test it. They just assume and do their maths and go, this is what your dog will get after X amounts of months stored and X amount of weeks of the bag being opened at certain temperature and certain. It's just so ridiculous to think that that nutrient is there for your dog when they go to eat it. It's nonsensical, it's silly. It doesn't happen, and studies show it absolutely fails to do the job.
Absolutely, studies do show that. On the Naked Dog blog, I've highlighted 2 studies that they looked into, because they're not checking pet food, but when someone has gone to check the pet food and they've looked into it and they've said, well, let's see, you know, if it really has what they say that it's got in it, they failed dismally. Wasn't it something like only 24% amongst
there was a Davies study in 2016 in the UK, and 62% of complete dry food sold in the UK, and 94% of complete cans did not meet the minimum standards set by AFCO. We don't know what optimums are. We don't have any RDAs for a dog, not a single one. We have minimum standards based on a lot of them plucked out of the air. Like the micro minerals are interesting. Like whatever about zinc and calcium, there's loads of, we need, like, you've enough iron in your body to make a small nail. So that's quite a lot of this mineral. But when you get down to micro minerals, the things like manganese and selenium, they're so tiny that to study them and to see what happens when you have a little deficiency, you know, is nearly impossible. So when you look at that with AFCO, they have 0 studies of manganese, selenium, copper in dogs. None at all. They have 0 idea. So when you go to see what is the recommended dosage for pups, where no studies have been done. Recommended dosage for lactating mothers, no idea. Adult dogs, no idea. Seniors, the studies haven't been done. But if we look at chickens, and so they're happy to look at what's happening in other animals at that time to get an idea for their ridiculous concept, that is the AFCO guidelines. But they're not happy to look at other animals, such as humans, to say, well, this is why the obesity crisis and cancer crisis and pancreatitis and kidney disease, all these nutritional diseases that we have spiking in humans, might the same reason be applying to dogs? And they're like, oh, completely different animal. We need more science before we can make those sort of assumptions. But when they want to sell a product, oh, they'll make as many assumptions as you like. So the whole mineral stuff is so dark. There's so little info there that it's, when you open it up and go to look, you go, but there's nothing in this. This just is all a whole lot of guff. There's no studies of dogs, because to study deficiency is very difficult. And to link that spot on your face to a selenium deficiency, which takes months and months to build, it's impossible. You know, it could be a million things that cause that spot on the face. So we don't have any studies to back us up. So when like that study you're mentioning about the UK study showing like you have a 1 in 3 chance of your complete pet food hitting the minimum standards. It's like, okay, well, if that's that option, I can make my own crap effort at DIY and it be equally good or poor as the thing that's being promoted to me by this candy company, you know. So it's like that should take a lot of the fear away. It's like you don't have any other choice. It's not like this has been proven or shown or tested to be good for your dog, you know, in any way, you know, only evidence of the opposite.
Yeah, and it is really interesting because the guidelines that are created, even if we took them as, okay, you've made an effort, you know, I'm not going to be devil's advocate here, but you've made an effort, you've pulled together the science you can get.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair statement.
There's very, very little science out there.
Yeah.
And so they've pulled together what they have got. I think the zinc, you can read in the Honey's Raw Proof document, which is available to purchase off their website, actually. And it's just a little book, a couple of years research that somebody called Katie McCall did. And it was her life's sort of, about 2 years of her life was this study. Yeah. And it's proving the nutrients in raw. So to go off tangent and proving that it can hit complete and balanced guidelines, which we know raw can, because we've just done that with Whole Foods with the Naked Dog food as well.
Yeah.
But in her book, it mentions her findings on some of the parameters in the guidelines. And so I think one of the zinc is something like 8 puppies, and it's a typical AFGO trial type thing. So it's a certain amount of puppies, and some of them are allowed not to finish the trial.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's kind of a strange way to get the nutrients. But if we said that's all the nutrients, all the science they've got in nutrients, fine. Play devil's advocate.
Yeah, that'll be fair.
For me, it isn't actually complete. So we've got people that are purchasing these processed food under the belief that it is complete and balanced, but actually it's a set of nutrients, but it's not the full spectrum.
Yeah, that's fair.
The dog needs every day. So that alone then brings it to fall down.
Yeah.
Test out some of the ones that are missing.
Yeah, I really like that, actually. I wish I wish they said, look, we did our best. AFGO came from the NRC. The NRC was a small branch of the FDA over in the US. That's a lot of... anyway, so the FDA was told to manage pet food a bit better because they were just selling all sorts of stuff. And in the 1970s, they stopped putting meat in pet food, essentially. Some would say they really haven't improved since. But the meat in pet food went to zero. So the taurine in pet food went to zero. And tens of thousands of dogs and cats, not just thousands, tens of thousands, particularly cats, started getting DCM, which is this disease that came to the forefront 3 or 4 years ago for very nefarious reasons. So the FDA were called in saying, guys, there's a lot of pet owners very annoyed here. And so the NRC was created. And since then, the NRC, desperately underfunded, just said, how about we just give this to the pet food companies and they can just manage themselves, which is such a good idea because corporations love managing and being accountable themselves. And so AFGO took these guidelines, and as opposed to doing exactly what you said, saying, well, look, we have very little information to go on. Instead, what they started selling to the veterinary industry via paying off the veterinary departments is that these are the gold standard. It's done. The science is done. You don't need to look at it. Just trust it. There it is there. You don't need to have it. You don't need to copy there. This is perfect. It's done. Take your mind off it. We have complete pet food. That's the BS that makes me sick, because it's totally unscientific, and it's cajoling pet owners and vets into picking this product up. So for example, zinc. Look, the zinc one was actually, it was Katie McCall's work that kind of put me towards the zinc bit in the first place. AFGO want 120 milligrams of zinc per 1,000 calories or kilo of pet food, whatever.
Yeah.
I say, okay, so you go around looking for this animal that gives that much zinc. And I was like, wow, there's nowhere near enough zinc in rats, rabbits, seagulls, bloody whatever animal we looked at that somebody had squished through a food processor and analyzed to see how much zinc was inside it. There isn't it in insects, nothing. And in fact, only really via nuts and seeds do you get a really high zinc content. So raw dog food producers are being said, no, you have to have this much zinc in your pet food. And they're like, hang on, this is as good a raw dog food as we can make with some plant ingredients and stuff to bring up the fact that the meat quality mightn't be as good as it used to be 20, 30 years ago. We're just wrecking the soils and all that kind of stuff. Barn rearing animals, feeding them crap, not nutritious food. So you're not getting the same quality meat. So we add in this. And when we look at it, there isn't a third of the zinc that they need to hit the minimum standards. And the reason for that is ultra-processed pet food is based on zinc oxide. So they have to use this huge figure. And then they say, this huge figure, that's normal. And that's what normal food has to have. And you're like, no, natural zinc is absorbed at a rate 10 times higher than your zinc oxide. So I should need 10 times less. But try argue that with AFGO and FEDIAF, because then you're outside the AFGO FEDIAF guidelines. Now you're not complete, you're complementary pet food, and you kill your sales growth. So us manufacturers who want to be successful, I was one, is like, well, shit, I want to be successful. So, okay, I'll put in 1% pumpkin seeds. That's a great addition. You can do cool things with pumpkin seeds, lots of vitamin E and zinc and selenium, and they want to get those ones up as well. And it's anti-helminthic, and you can say, okay, well, that's an angle. But the real reason I put that in there is because I know I need more zinc in my mix. And so that becomes a reason to pick that. So that's not how I want to formulate food. I want to say, this is what I think a dog would need. And I do think birds would eat nuts and seeds and stuff, and then the dog would eat the bird and he'd get a tiny amount of it. And studies show feral dogs do have a tiny amount of this stuff in their guts, which is probably enough of these microminerals. But I just don't like the fact that I have to account for the likes of zinc, iron, the same thing. You have to put in loads of iron, but luckily there's loads of iron in liver and stuff. We don't have to think about it, but we're barely hitting their low figure when we know we've lots of iron in raw dog food. And it's just these ridiculous figures. There's many, many more. Yeah.
There's a clause, actually, I think it's something like clause 3.1 in the FEDIAF guidelines, and that is stating that they have increased the mineral amounts due to what they call phytic acids, so things that could block mineral absorption. And they recognized that those ingredients that could block the mineral absorption could possibly be in some of the pet foods. So of course they're not individualizing with the foods, they're just saying let's make those mineral levels higher. So yes, when you come to put a fresh raw or a fresh wet pet food against those guidelines, it doesn't make sense. You never hit the target of, say, disease, not easily. But really you shouldn't need to, because really the phytic acid clause has made the amount higher than it needs to be for a fresh food.
Yeah, true.
Those ingredients aren't there, the blocking ingredients, the anti-nutrient ingredients.
The anti-nutrients, as they say. And then there's ingredient clashes. There's like manganese is one we were talking about there recently. Everything binds manganese out. Phytic acid annoys it. Copper, zinc, and whatever the third one is, probably calcium, binds to manganese and doesn't let the body absorb it. So all these clashes in nutrients. And then there was a huge study done on calcium supplements, and the result was, as you expected, not great. And actually side effects. So I'm like, oh, side effects to calcium supplements. I'm not surprised. And they said particularly the calcium supplements that use vitamin D. So vitamin D and calcium go hand in hand. Those two nutrients are really important. One's as important to the other. You've got to have them up there. If you don't have enough calcium, you're going to have a vitamin D issue, and vice versa. Really important for various different processes that I'm poorly versed in. But what the study was showing was that when you from a conical flask, when you supplement with calcium and vitamin D3, which is one of the ones sometimes we think, is there enough of that in there? That resulted in a 17% more likelihood in kidney stones in humans. And this is a collection of studies. So there's just clashes all over the place, because this conical flask addition to nutrients, it's not without things clashing and arguing. You're just putting a whole heap of angry people in a cage, and that things are just not going to go smoothly. That's not how food presents normally. It's supposed to happen, through nature. Some days you get a bit more selenium because you found a frog. I just made that up. Some days you might have a bit more calcium because you found a carcass. And, any nutrients that you really need every day, your body has evolved to make itself, because it's amazing. That's why they're non-essential amino acids, because your body says, we just need this all the time, guys. So we're just going to take over and make it ourselves and kill off the people that can't. And then suddenly your body's able to make certain amino acids, but others you need to eat pretty regularly. So it's just so complex. And to suggest that they have this done with no science, no studies, no long-term health benefits, no head-to-heads with appropriately fed dogs. Until recently, since 2015, we've got 4, and all favor fresh dry food by a margin. So it just doesn't add up, no matter what way you look at it, and particularly on the mineral front. And then calcium, we try to say, okay, 10% bone in raw dog food, but whose bone? A chicken of 10 weeks old is not the same as the bone from a cow that's a year old. A chicken bone at 10 weeks old is full of water, a little bits of calcium and iron and zinc, but it's bendy. You can nearly break it yourself because he's 10 weeks old. She's a baby. You take a half-ton cow, their leg bones are diamond hard, very dry, full of calcium and zinc and iron, really hard. If you give a dog 10% beef bone or 10% chicken bone, their poos are going to look different. If you increase that to 20%, you could probably include 20% carcass in your dog's diet, 20% chicken bones, and your dog will be all right. But if you put 20% beef bone into your dog's food, you're going to know all about it, and he's going to have very dry little poops. So it's not, the bones aren't the same. So, chicken, duck, turkey, rabbit, and venison, which bones are we talking about? How much are people actually measuring that in their mixes? It's hard. It's complicated. I'm not sure, I think we're being dishonest to say that we have to adhere to these AFCO principles, and raw dog food manufacturers are trying to say, we are saying it's nonsense, but you still have to play the game because they own the playbook, so.
They do commercially, legally to trade, you should really be bringing out food that hits these targets, if you're going to use the word complete.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah.
It isn't always an easy thing to do, to really trust yourself. And I think one of the things I like about fresh food feeding is that it helps empower people to trust themselves. And I think this is part of life, to come away from someone's done it for you into, I can think for myself, I can create what's perfect for my own dog as an individual, and to trust that, okay, one day they gave them a little bit more bone and the next day they didn't, but you can see the stool. And so it's learning what's right for your dog. You know, it's like I always say, you've got to eat Marmite to know whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You're not gonna really get ill
Yeah.
from eating the Marmite and trying it. But, you know,
Yeah.
you've got to go there. You've got to actually try the Marmite to know whether you're a lover or not. So, but there seems to be an awful lot of and I think this goes across the board, maybe in all people, but especially in dog owners, of not trusting our own judgment and thinking not good enough, we're not a good enough dog parent, we wouldn't be able to do this. And really, fresh food feeding can be scary from that point of view. This empowerment is a massive leap, actually, to take, to say, actually, I can do this. You know? And it's almost like sometimes I feel like when I'm on my consultations, I'm doing more coaching than I am nutrition.
Yeah, totally. Just like, I think people have PTSD about this, and it's coming from the fact that they've moved science from the back of, well, food never came in packets, so it never had any science on it, so we just ate it, and it was great, and it had muck on it, and we'd flick the muck off and we'd eat it, we'd flick the slug off and we'd eat it, we'd grow a lot of it ourselves. Now food, corn, you know, you strip off its natural packet and put it in a plastic packet, and it has ingredients. So like suddenly I think they've taken the science of food production, which was handy when they were making chocolate bars and ridiculous little things back in the 60s and 70s. And they've taken that and they've moved the science to the front of the packet. So now your shampoo has amino acids in it, and, you know, 1% jojoba oil or something. And it's like, it's just so ridiculous, as if that was needed to be known. It's like, it's soap, you know, it's just different types of soap. That's all it is. It's soap with a bit of smell in it. So what it does is it saps your ability to think that I can probably make my own soap, or I could not wash my hair as often, or it's just all fear, and fear sells. So the more they can take your confidence and ability to choose away, the more products they sell. So every ad, this makeup will make you look better and more acceptable. These jeans will get you a date. These shoes will make you run faster. It's all to make you think, yeah, no, I'll be better if I get that. And with pet food, it's the same thing. My dog will be healthier if he gets this product made by a candy company. What an insane suggestion. And yet we get solace from spending this money on Weetabix with a cow's toenail in it. But I can see why the fear is there. There's a lot of money spent to make you feel that way and make that packet look very scientific, but it's nonsense. It's just little Oz peddling the machine. And once you kind of pull back the curtain and kind of realize that, you go, oh, this is nonsense. There's no truth to any of this, really. It's just a bit of a game to make me buy it, you know. So I did believe it in the start, Afko. Like you said, I got pet food up off the floor, but unfortunately all pet food aimed for that minimum then, because nobody was getting rewarded for making good pet food and making good decisions and stuff. So yeah, like, it's just the PTSD bit really bothers me. I always say, look, guys, you haven't a clue how much calcium you gave the kids yesterday. You don't know what their RDA of calcium is. The most important, you don't know where they got it from. How much did they absorb? You don't know. My God, you know. And here you are fussing over your dog, and you haven't even thought about it for your children. Like, it's such a fantastic job they have done on us. Really, it's mad. But I understand the stress of it. I understand the fear. We were all there making the leap. It was always a bit scary, you know.
Yeah. And just to also, because I'd quite like to send this video out to people who maybe haven't made the switch. So when Conor talks about candy companies creating your dog food, when you go up the pyramid of who is the manufacturer, and then who is the owner of that company, and then who owns that company, what we tend to find is Mars and Nestle at the top of most of them. So yeah, one or the other, depending on which brand you've gone for, because we think that they're all different and they look different market wise. But actually the processed food, generally speaking, you know, people say, well, I've got a better quality one, but really it maybe just hasn't got as many flavorings and colors in, or maybe it's marketed as grain-free and it has potatoes, something else instead. So really all processed foods, no matter if you think yours is better, is still going to have not a very nice fatty acid spectrum, so not conducive to health fatty acid spectrum. It's going to have denatured amino acids, which, you know, they're on human barbecue websites. If you go on human barbecue websites, how to barbecue your food, it will say do not cook it over certain temperatures because you will create advanced glycation end products and other carcinogenic substances. So it is there in black and white, do not go over these temperatures. And yet the meat meal, even if the food doesn't go over those temperatures when it is extruded into the kibbles that you buy, it will go over those temperatures when it's created as meat meal in the first place. So, you know, there's so much to think about with it.
Even that meat meal, I love the meat meal thing. I like saying to people, like, people don't understand what meat meal is. They think it's meat, meat meal, but you know, it's bone meal. Landscape gardeners call that bone meal, and I've got a box of it downstairs for the plants, for the tomatoes, and it's bone. It's just dried yellow bits of bone. And so they don't send money sending animals for rendering. They don't make money doing that. They take every bit of meat off the cow, and the head and the spine, the bits that we're not allowed to use anymore since BSE, and the frame of any bones that they can't use go for rendering. So you get guts and heads and spines arriving in the rendering plants in the EU. In the US, it's a horror show, because 2 out of 5 of the main rendering companies still take in cats and dogs, the restaurant grease, you know, spoiled stuff from supermarkets, 4D animals, dead, diseased, dying, disabled, roadkill, all that goes into your meat meal. And the cat and dog thing, it's the second most likely reason pet food is recalled in the US is the presence of SPB, sodium pentobarbital, the chemical used for euthanizing cats and dogs. It's the second most likely reason pet food comes off the shelves. Hundreds of thousands of tons every month, millions of tons a year of this pet food is recalled for this, or maybe 1 million tons. But it's huge quantities of it, because when a recall is done, it's across so many brands, as Caroline just said. So meat meal is essentially bone meal, and they cook this bone meal up. It stew up this sludge, and the fat goes to the top for your jellies and your soap, and all the protein sinks to the bottom. They scrape this grey goo off and they dry it, and it's bone meal for the landscape gardeners. It's meat and bone meal for the pet food producers, and they just call it meat meal, because meat and bone meal, we don't want to say there's bone in it. And of this luxurious ingredient, they can use about 4% in their pet food. So if it says with chicken meal, or with chicken or with beef, it contains 4% chicken or beef bones. That's their meat ingredient, and the rest is this. So we slag off vegan pet food, but most cereal-based pet food is virtually vegan anyway. There's hardly any plant or meat ingredients in it, and they can only use 4% of it. I think is staggering. It's like, wow, how poor are the rest of your ingredients that you can only put in 4% bone meal into the product? It's and now they stopped calling it meat and bone meal. Now they call it dried meat, because they said meat and bone meal, bloody annoying people on social media. You're bloody canine nutritionists and talking nonsense with their followers, and suddenly the whole public think meat and bone meal isn't a good ingredients, and now we're going to call it dehydrated meat. Totally illegal, but they own the rules, so they can do what they want. How misleading is that? So very antigenic stuff, cooked in a multitude of times. Horrible.
Yeah, I think the wording on marketing websites can be very misleading, definitely. And you do find meat meal called all sorts of things. You actually look what's in it, and when you're someone like myself or yourself, and you know how it's made, you think, well, can't actually be true, because you can't put fresh meat in an extruder. So it's actually made with fresh meat, but it's so tough if you're a pet owner, because you just do not know where to turn for succinct and you know, good information. And I mean, a couple of years ago, I think it was, the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society conference the whole conference was called To Balance or Not to Balance. Was it something like that? Very similar title to that. And you had speakers up there saying, you know, we should be thinking about the nutrients in our pets' food, because actually 80-10-10s, as we traditionally know them and traditionally have been calling them complete, are far from actually nutrient complete. A little bit like the guidelines, you know, you can say, it's got the majority of stuff in it. And then there was other people that said, actually, you know, we don't live like that ourselves. Very much like you just said, you don't know what your child or somebody you care about, you don't know how much calcium they've had, and are you worrying about it? You know, even over a month, we don't think about this, let alone every day. So, you know, it's an interesting concept that was the title of this whole 2-day conference. And then we had a set of speakers saying yes we should, and a set of speakers saying no we shouldn't. And I think it does, I think it's somewhere in the middle is where So understanding that 80-10-10s are deficient in some nutrients, but also understanding that meat mostly does have the things that your dog needs.
Mostly.
Where's he going to get his vitamins from? Like, that's a human-led vitamin C message that you can since a child. That is, the vitamins that dogs need, predominantly the vitamins, are in meat. They're actually in there, you know. It's actually, you should be asking more, where do they get other things from? It's just it's like a churned out term, I think, that we've just
yeah.
I mean,
I like they asked for the balancing thing. Somebody said when I was, on a multitude of times trashing AFCO a little bit, and somebody said, I understand that AFCO is rubbish, but like, what else have we got to work on? And I'm like, well, as long as you understand it's rubbish, it's not like what else have you got to work on? You've nothing else to work on. And they're like, well, that's not enough. Give me something better than that. I'm like, okay, food pyramids. So there's a reason humans have food pyramids, because that basic message gets through to us. Yes, we can. We like 3-word slogans. That's how we work today. So food pyramids are fantastic, and 3 or 4 layers on them. And your dog's food pyramid is essentially loads of meat on the bottom, bits of bone and organ meat, a little bit of tiny plant matter at the top if you want. Some people don't, but I certainly do, a little bits and pieces. So a food pyramid is easy to understand. It's like, you understand food pyramids, and this is what your dogs look like. So that's all you need to know. And as long as you've got a good bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that and a little bit of that going in, you'll be fine. Move your ingredients around. That's all the balance you need to worry about. And after that, that's 95%, and that's good enough. And after that, you're probably wasting your time. It's just like, you can be good and healthy as best you can. But we look back at ours. Sometimes you look back at a weekend and you go, mother of God, I need to eat a salad. I've just had the worst weekend of debauchery. We all do it. So, 95% is good enough for anybody. You have to have a little bit of sin here and there. It's life is too short there. When
we go back to what we absorb, we don't just absorb food. And part of your pyramid, okay, nutriently, physical food in the bowl, but and I mean, I'm not being too spiritual, I hope, when I say you miss out things like love.
Yeah.
When we are in a good mood when we feed our dog, I genuinely think that makes it more nutritious than if we're putting in all this negativity.
Yeah.
We know that water can pick up emotions. That is fully scientifically proven. There's photographic evidence of it. And yet, how many times are we rushing? Oh my God, got to get this out, got to get this feed to the dog. I do it even sometimes when I come back from work and I catch myself. I'm like, Caroline, you've got one dog.
yeah.
One dog. Think of the people that are now feeding 10.
Now you've got all these dogs as well, Caroline. You're taking it on board. I need to hear more about this water with emotions. Oh my God, I'm going to be Googling after this.
Oh my God, there's a whole book full of it with the photos and like photographic molecular
water,
microscopic photo evidence of what happens to food when you play it. Even things like you play it Megadeth, the water goes a certain way in the photo. If you play it like Brahms concerto or something, like a different way. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm interested. Oh, I am interested.
So going back to getting the nutrients in, I think, because one of the things to consider is, of course, the plant material, as you very well mentioned. Some people are just totally anti-plant material, and it's really interesting where that's all come from. And I think historically it's come from dogs having yeast and a fear of the dog even developing cancer.
Yeah.
That's been another fear. And in the past we had much better farmed meat. So historically the raw meaty bone diet was more nutritious than
agree.
now. So I mean, there's an argument there that yes, you could say that dogs don't need a lot of plant material, but I think in this modern day they need more vitamin C, certainly. They definitely do, and they evolve because we've got a more polluted world. So they're going to need it, and they're going to use up vitamins as well, and antioxidants, and detox nutrients as well. So nutrients that would support detoxification. I think they're going to be used up far more quickly in today's modern world.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I do believe that they do need a bit of plant material. I think I fall down where I think that they need to have like 50% of the bowl or something like that. Like, I agree with your pyramid totally, that it's going to be, the majority of it's going to be meat. Yeah,
I think so. Like, I mean, that's the glorious bit. Like, people believe, like, when you look at the AFCO guidelines, it's protein, which is broken down to amino acids, fats, which are broken down to your different bits of fatty acids and omegas, and your vitamins and your minerals, as if that's what food is. But food is just incredibly complex. It's got so much stuff in it that, like, the best, they look how hard they tried to make baby formula. They really tried. Multitude of companies pouring billions into this industry, And, you know, 2 or 3 studies just go, you're not even close. You know, you're not. Baby formula is amazing. It helps so many mothers that need it. I get it. Bloody hell, I get it. But, you know, it didn't beat breast milk. It doesn't, because you can't put growth factors. You can't make that in the lab. And the multitude of things that are in prebiotics and stuff that we just fail to understand, and how nutrients collide with each other. They don't do it when they're naturally. Sometimes they do it when they're coming from a conical flask. Incredibly complex. So you couldn't make complete food for humans at all. So they have to say, look, obviously that's best. So these same companies are saying they've done it for pets, and it's like, well, you know, you haven't got any studies to back that up. So I think you're right, though. I think, like, the nutrients need to come from food if you're going to be topping things up. And I definitely do agree, actually, that studies do show that pets are taking an awful hit from because they're knee high and they do everything with their face because they've no hands. They snuffle up in the corners of your house. For example, do you know who's an interesting fella? Joe from
probiotics.
Yeah, do you know, everyone knows the guy.
Big shout out to Joe. Yeah, he's
ingenious
the products are great.
His products are great, but he comes from a background of cleaning products, and he was the first to kind of say, whoa, we need better cleaning products. They jumped to probiotic cleaners, which is as opposed to, for example, my toddler is, this is going off on one, sorry guys, but it is relevant. It comes back to this dogs being more hammered with compounds. But I was using my antibacterial spray in the house. You know, my baby's on the ground or something and she spills her milk, and I'm cleaning up and antibacterial to get down to the cracks of the tiles, and I'm wiping that up, and she walks across the same area and she drops her soother onto the ground, and I'm thinking, oh, I think I'd actually rather she drop that into the old milk than I do the Dettol kind of spray. No offense to Dettol. And then I'm looking at that going, this isn't correct. A couple of years ago, there's a revelation. I start looking at Luca probiotics and I start chatting to Joe. And Joe goes, yeah, these cleaning products, you spray them on the ground and then they're dry in 5-10 minutes and then they blow into the dust of your house. And I was like, oh, yeah. He goes, yeah, it doesn't sit there. Once it dries, it's powder. And it goes, off it goes into the dust in the corners of your house. And your animal sniffs that up. That's what they sniff. We don't sniff our dust up. We hoover it and we vacuum or whatever, and we, you know, but dogs will sniff it up. So that dust contains compounds that you use for cleaning your house. And after 10 or 15 minutes, the patch is now bare. And the 1% of bacteria you didn't kill, because it's like a mountain range, you just skied over the top with your cloth, they start multiplying. So you didn't kill the really tough baddies. Now you've got bacteria that are better able to withstand that all on the surface. He goes, had you used a probiotic spray, which is like lactobacillus or bifido, 1 or 2 or 3 species like that, they just live on that kind of surface, and then they grow and they stay there. Good bacteria. So it doesn't matter if your kid licks her finger on the ground and eats it, because it's not negative bacteria. They're cleaning hospitals with this stuff now. So all this nasty chemicals and stuff we use in our gardens, in our houses, our scented perfumes, all the stuff that goes into the air comes down into the ground and into your dust. And spray cans of aerosol, you know, use a roll-on. So like all these sort of things are accumulating in dogs. So yeah, it's very interesting that antioxidants and stuff need to be a part of it. And AFCO do not consider antioxidants. They don't consider vitamin C. You can use, you know, so antioxidants are just like, oh, when your dog is sick, take some coenzyme Q10. It's like, no, you should have been taking coenzyme Q10 every day by eating heart meat, and then your force field would stay up. Why let your force field go down, get sick, and buy a pill from the vet? They don't include glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen, hyaluronic acid. These are all the supplements that you get in a joint supplement that you'll pay a fortune for. When your middle-aged lab is arthritic and you go, oh, his joints are rotting. So now we'll give him the building blocks he should have had every day of his life from a raw dog food diet. So like, these compounds are not optional extras. These antioxidants and stuff that Caroline's talking about, things that help you detox, these are vital parts of the diet. And like you said, more so today, which is an interesting slant. I haven't heard that. And that's definitely true. So yeah, these things need to be added to the food more and more, particularly if you're adding dry food. I would say no more animals on the planet need such additions. I can't help but kind of put a plug in for your product then and kind of say products like what I'm looking at in the background there, the answer and stuff.
Yeah.
Would help out.
Yeah, because the other thing, I mean, apart from the cleaning, they're right down next to the exhaust fumes. We're up there.
Yeah.
I would always move if I see a car or someone get in a car. I'm like, right, Foos, you're over now. We're crossing the road. Yeah.
Is your dog called Foos?
Foosa.
Oh, that's a nice name. Where did that come from?
She was named at the rescue. So yeah, well, I kind of thought it was a bit odd at first, but I've really got used to it over the last year.
Yeah, no, it's nice. I like that straight away.
She was named after the Madagascar film The the American, not American, the African painted dogs.
Oh, cool. Right, very good.
Big ears and a dark face.
Oh, so, nice, yeah. I love Madagascar movies.
So yeah, but and actually she will eat the answer, which is a miracle, because she does not like fruits, veggies, and like she will pick around it. She will just not eat it and look at you as if to say she's a proper raw meaty bone dog.
Yeah. Did you powder the product, or what way? Is it like little bits of stuff, or is it a powder, or what is it?
This is a powder. Yeah. So this has been something I've been creating in the background for a while. It kind of got put to one side when we decided to hit the FEDIAF parameters with our food. So we wanted to be able to really say that our food was complete to those parameters, as well as knowing that it goes beyond those parameters, because
of course,
it's got the antioxidants and all the other things that raw food will always have. So yeah, but then afterwards we went back to this, and my idea really was that I wanted something that would fulfill the answer to a question that I get asked repeatedly, and even more so since I've been running this centre and actually selling the food on a daily basis to people. So they will pick up an 80-10-10 or a pure meat meal, and they will quite rightly say, well, do I have to add anything to this?
Yeah. It's a common question.
And I wanted something that I could say, yeah, and the answer is you add this. So that's why we decided to put it the answer. So there are other multivitamin and mineral supplements out there. However, I've tried very hard to make this unique and fit with the fact that I know there's a lot of dogs that are on 80-10-10s because they are yeasty dogs, and they don't want to have the phytonutrition that would contribute to the yeast.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Completely anti-yeast. It literally has 6 ingredients. So hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 7. Sorry, it has it has. Oh no, it does have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, it does have 6. It's because shiitake and mushrooms are 2 words.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Have it like this. So yeah. And it's pure whole foods.
Nice.
So pure whole foods. Everything is fully bioavailable and fully absorbable.
Yep.
So when they get in, they're gonna pass over that small intestine tract that we were talking about. They're gonna get in there, which is more than I can say for some of the others that I've seen come out in the meantime making this. Which I saw them being launched, and I went, oh my god, they've done the same thing as us. As your heart goes,
oh no,
it's product, you love it and you've worked on it so hard. And then I turned it over and I went, oh, this is synthetic. This is why would you do that? Why would you create a synthetic?
It's been done. It's done. That product already exists. Why would
so this basically is the answer to what do you add to your 80-10-10 meals, or the pure range, because we don't call them 80-10-10 now. Another thing, trading standards asked us not to do that, so we don't do that now.
What? I didn't know. Oh, interesting.
It did, yeah. So anyway, so that you can add it, and that is what you add, and this will ensure that the food then does meet FEDIAF guidelines. So you have that peace of mind that at least it's hitting those targets. Yeah. And but as you say, and as we know, every dog is slightly different. Okay. Yeah. So if you've got a dog that's very poorly and isn't absorbing very well because they do have a small intestine overgrowth or something's going on, you can never guarantee. When we did our product testing and our checking and our formulation to ensure that it did hit the targets or the parameters within the different meat types that we've got in our ranges, we did that based on the average healthy dog, because there's no other way you can do it.
No, you can't accommodate all this. No.
But it is, at the moment, I think it is the best bet, because you know exactly what's in there. It's also the only one I think that's going to create actual balance, because there are a heck of a lot of these nutrient multivitamins, but they're say high in this or high in that, and it looks really great when you actually see it written on their website. You think, oh, I want my dog to have loads of that. But actually, there's so much already in the fresh food that you could end up overdosing. So that's why I wanted it to be fully balanced, so that when you put in the 2 grams, it's per 100 grams of food, you know that it's for that food. So you're not saying, okay, a dog that's 10 kilograms probably needs 5 grams of this. You're saying the food needs this to be
Yeah, sounds good.
So this is how we've done it. So yeah, I'm mega pleased with it. We launched it at Pat's, as I said, and we've sold quite a lot already. I've got some out the back, all labelled up with all my customers' names that they want some. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. And as I said, it is anti-yeast. So if the dog's on an elimination diet of any kind, then it will
suit them to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, which, because sadly, you know, when your dog is on an elimination diet, there's very little you can feed them to get in that manganese and that vitamin E and that zinc. So that meant a lot to me to have that product. So when I'm on my consults, I can say, actually, you can add this.
Boom, that's what you want. Yeah, it has to come from real ingredients. I think anybody that's still pushing the whole kind of I see why some raw dog food companies do it. They are very keen to get the AFCO, FEDIAF kind of tick on the product, but you can do that using real ingredients. Those nutrients are out there. Yeah, you know, it can be done. Everyone else is doing it. Just copy. If you know, for the smaller manufacturers that have their
how little knowledge there is out there. Really about pet food and about, I mean, I think a lot of the people, I can see some of my friends, some people I know on here, you know, we tend to get a lot of people watching that kind of already feed raw and already know. And people that don't, people that trust processed food, you know, please share this video with your friends that you know feed processed food, because it is really useful information to know that there is another way to do it, and it is safer. Really, it is safer than trusting those guidelines that are of the apparent science.
Absolutely.
So Kelly has said, there's a comment that Kelly has said about the negativity that you get from vets when you talk about feeding fresh food. I think, and I think probably Kelly, if it's the Kelly I think it is, she's heard me say this before, maybe. But my thing is to call it fresh and not raw.
Definitely.
That changes the game entirely. You can say you feed fresh food and the vet doesn't take a step back.
No.
And they're like, oh, okay, well, what exactly is it? And then you just say, well, I feed it balanced. I spoke to a nutritionist. We do this. It's ready-made food. It's all fresh. And you don't even necessarily have to tell them. And speaking, the dog belongs to you. Yeah. You would be liable if the dog bit somebody, not the vet. You know, the dog belongs to you. Yeah. And this is where the empowerment comes in, I think, isn't it? Where we have to avoid the argument and I think maybe not even try and persuade the vet, because I think we can get ourselves into a bit of a pickle to do that. And just go with the whole discussing fresh. And go from there. Any ideas on your?
No, that's my idea. The fresh food for sure. I would say the same thing. Use the word fresh because it's very hard to argue against fresh food. I would also say I'm feeding a complete product made by a company with professional nutritionists on board who spend a lot of time purely thinking about nutrition. And their nutritionists have designed a complete product for my dog that is backed by AFCO and DEFRA and all the other kind of slogans that you need to say to the vet and go, it's backed by the same companies that your pet food that you're selling is backed by. It's just that mine's fresh and yours isn't. That's the only difference. So let's move on. And then that's it. You don't have to tell them you're adding in some bits and pieces to the bowl. I don't trust any pre-made. I would say pre-made is great. It's there. It's done. That's great. I've got a bit of naked dog today or whatever my pet shop down the road wants to give me for doing various tasks for him. So I get, okay, great. So I get this 80-10-10, but I'm always adding in my own bits. You don't need to get into that with him or her. You just say, I'm feeding an 80-10-10 made by a professional. And, it's covered by the same laws and regulations as your product. If anything, there's a few more extra badges that raw dog food have that dry food don't have, such as raw safe and a few other things that are coming in. And it's like, we have the same legislation governing our companies as they do the other companies. So I would just move on. I would just park it and say, oh, I'm not doing it myself. I wouldn't dream of it. I wouldn't have a clue what to do. If I did it, my dog's butt would fall off. So, you just say complete food and it's great. Everything's great. And they'll say, oh, it's very dangerous. Watch your children. I'll go, yeah, okay.
The PFMA have also produced a document, which we're going through the process of at the moment. So that's an accreditation as well as the raw safe. So we're going through that at the moment, as are a lot of the members of the PFMA. Sure. So it's great to see that they are now getting behind raw food producers, because for a long time they haven't been. I did have a chat last year with the chairman of the PFMA, who owns another raw feeding company, about getting some guidelines in that maybe didn't at least even have the phytic acid clause, and just having some that are just that little bit more connected with the fresh food, and how nutrients would show up in the fresh food. Myself and Katie McCall, we mentioned her earlier, we created like an energy density calculation to actually see whether raw or fresh pet food would hit the targets. And once you do the energy density conversion, you can see that the parameters they're asking us to hit are not applicable at all. So it's like you're just totally using the wrong kind of
measuring tool. It's like you're trying to measure water. It's like you're trying to measure water with inches, and a measuring tape, and it's like, well, you just don't use that for measuring water, so it's the wrong tool. So people say, well, if I can't measure water in inches, then if we need to use inches because we've nothing else. It's like, well, inches is just wrong. So it's not that you need something else. It's like, well, it's the tool you have is completely wrong. So it's funny that we would still rather use a wrong tool than have no tool at all, and it's like, I don't know how to explain that. It just seems to me, it sounds a bit strange. It's like, no, that won't work. And it's like, but I've got nothing else. I feel like I'm explaining to my mother, because my mother would hang on to that measuring tape and keep on trying to measure the water. I always tell a story about my mum trying to convince vets is like trying to convince my mum that what we're doing is correct. So like I had, I was in guide dogs for years. I have a doctorate talking about behavior and nutrition. And, I'm in guide dogs, and then I have this raw dog food company, which I sank, $100,000 into. And I was doing that for a couple of years. Then I was on Dragon's Den. So, I'm building up some form of a CV. So when I say to mum, this is what dogs eat, she should probably say, oh, okay, yeah, well, you're the one with the expertise. So and my mum's just like, she'd say it in front of me. She'd meet her friends. I'd be standing beside her. And what's Conor doing now? And she'd go, oh, well, I don't know, it's something like fresh food or something for dogs or something. I don't know. It's another one of Conor's crazy things. And I'm sitting there seething going, Mum, at this stage, I'm a 35-year-old man. Do not talk to me like that. It's like, I have a factory, I've got employees. And so anyway, this is going on. And I'm fuming under my breath that my mum still sees me as this 5-year-old irritant. So I've got 4 older brothers that think of me the same thing, by the way. So I'm the baby of the litter. Anyway, this is just a family dilemma. I don't need to be sharing with people publicly. But anyway, mum was down the beach then, and she meets a guy with 2 German Shepherds, and we're a German Shepherd family. And he's 2 German Shepherds, and mum said, so what are you feeding? And he goes, oh, I actually just feed raw dog food to these 2. And she's like chicken and beef and stuff. And he goes, yeah, I know, it sounds a bit weird. He goes, no, my son talks about that. And he goes, is that Conor from Dogs First? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, oh yeah, I know him, I read his stuff. And mum comes beetling back to me, and she goes, Conor, I found someone that feeds meat to dogs. As if to say, like, you're not a gobshite. And I'm like, bloody hell, this is what it's like trying to talk to vets. It's like, you can try as much as you want, because unfortunately for vets, their position is not taken in science. Their position is taken in dogma. And that is a very hard thing to accept. Just try tell someone who's like a religious zealot that, evolution's pretty, makes a lot of sense. And they're like, no, the Bible says it's 6,000, 12,000 years old. So it's the same thing. And you trying to use more and more science to convince that person will just make them retreat and go, no, well, you haven't proved there's a origin of the universe then. Explain that to me. And you're like, bloody hell, we're talking about the origin of the universe. That's what vets will do. If you start getting into a conversation, they will find a scientific thing, and you will get tumbled over because you don't have the evidence either. But so I would treat the vet like my mother. I would tell her as little as possible to get what I need over the line. So I would say, I'm feeding a complete food made by professionals who are bound by the same rules as your guys are. So let's move on, and that would be it. I wouldn't bother getting into it with the vet because you'll just wrap yourself up, as you said. It's just
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's the empowering yourself to know that they're coming from a totally different viewpoint. So not get into that emotional argument. Yeah. What you're saying, it reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever watched it. If you haven't, you must find it. It was a banned TED talk in America, but I think you can still get it on YouTube here. And it's Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. It's called The Science Delusion.
Okay, cool.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I have it, I think, when you used to be able to take videos from YouTube years ago.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. It's on some where you back up your
Yeah.
some point. Yeah, really interesting. So
Yeah.
not just about nutrition, of course, but it opens up your mind to how certain things are created that then get called science.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite
Everything. Like, I mean, I look at I'm constantly thinking about that. I'm obsessed with that, like with the destruction of science, you know, and the bad studies that are out there. And trust the science. Don't try and understand it. Trust the science, you know. And a lot of the nonsense that came to a forefront recently. And it's like it's everywhere. It's like, you know, butter is bad for you, eggs is bad for you, meat is bad for you. Like all the normal natural foods are bad. And when you look back on those things, like eating meat gave cholesterol, so we sell cholesterol drugs. Every single bit of that is utter nonsense. They pretended that science backed all those things when in actual fact, we're coming back to the fact that, oh, actually, it's not really the saturated fat you're consuming. Actually, all that cholesterol is produced by your body because you're inflamed. So forget about trying to scrape away all the inflammation. That's why is your body inflamed? So, like, you know, the nonsense about eggs was a to sell more breakfast cereals. Essentially, the nonsense about butter was a margarine company. Once they got margarine over the line in the 60s, butter was bad, and we just buy this up. We just pick it up. You know, the obesity crisis. We just don't know what the cause of the obesity crisis is. Well, we do. Yeah, it's like high carbohydrate, sugar diets, ultra processed food. It's done over and over. Oh no. We need a better solution than that, and cancer and everything else. So the science backing these things is just hideous. Diabetes, just a wonderfully profitable illness. And sadly, people aren't getting the right information, particularly on nutrition, when we know you can really eat your way to a much better state if you had one of these diseases. Certainly recover from the likes of obesity. You know, people in cancer in hospitals are being fed high carbohydrate, being given jelly and custard, and it's like, you're just fueling growth of the thing that's killing you. It's like, why aren't hospitals the very pinnacle of the best dietary advice? If anything tells you how rotten the whole industry is, hospitals are putting out dire nutritional information. They just don't know, because they treat sick, they don't treat healthy, they don't understand about healthy. They look at you in the last 10% of your health, you know, and you're sick now. Nobody's looking after health, because really sickness is where the money is. So everyone's just dying for you to be sick. And that's why we've got so much crap food, crap advice, crap drugs, crap science, you know, and we have never been less healthy than in our entire lives. Like, people keep, oh, well, we're living so long. We're living shorter than we used to 5 years ago. The last 2 years in a row, Americans are living shorter lives. Chronic disease on every single measure, every autoimmune condition, every chronic illness is going up, not down. They haven't solved anything. Everything's just getting worse. And so what's the solution? More crap food, more crap drugs, more trust in the science, or take back a bit of control, educate yourself, turn off the TV a little bit, except for this show, and you know, and take back a bit of control, because it's what they're selling is not working. So I am not picking up what they're putting down at all anymore, really.
Yeah. They're trying to build trust, but it's in completely the wrong place. We need to be trusting ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
So I think before we go, which I'm due out, which is why I don't have my Naked Dog t-shirt. I'm very late already. But this is fun. So, and what have I got waiting for me? I've pre-ordered. So I've got it's one of these hotels with like a set menu, and it's potato gnocchi, I think, with wild mushrooms and spinach or something.
Nice. Lovely.
So, I kind of thought, well, it'll probably still be okay if it's cold.
Yeah, definitely.
I probably will not get there in time. Yeah. Anyway, so not about what I'm going to eat after this. Let's just go back to calcium, if we can, just to finish it in a complete circle. Yes. Because I just want to hear what you say to this as well. So as we were talking about fresh over raw, if people want to go down the route of cooking their meats and adding something like the answer maybe, or you know, something that's got the phytonutrition that the dog needs, how do they get that mineral content? And I'm not just talking calcium, but of course that's the main bulk of it. So how do they get that mineral content back in if there's no bone? What do you normally suggest to people?
So the calcium one is interesting, and I bounce off the idea that look, people are obsessed with, when you talk about calcium, like, you need calcium in your diet, okay, but also we used to talk about the calcium phosphorus ratio, that those two things, how much of A and B are in there, is really important. It turns out that that's really important for ultra processed pet food that use calcium carbonate and phosphates as opposed to natural phosphorus. Those two things, when you use those two horrible compounds together, you have to be very careful about how much goes in. Okay, So in natural pet food land, it turns out when you look at prey animals, the calcium phosphorus ratio is totally different to what they were selling us, completely different to prey animals. And that's what the standard should be. So we know the calcium phosphorus ratio isn't as important, but having some calcium in there, we always have lots of phosphorus because there's loads of phosphorus in meat. Having some calcium in there is important. And if you're cooking, we tend to take the bones out. I love a bit of Judy Morgan, and herself and her team were saying, look, if you've got a pre-made raw dog food and you wanted to lightly cook that, 70 degrees is a bacteria kill step. That's Salmonella E. coli are dead at 70 degrees. If you lightly cook that food for an instant at 70 degrees, is that very mashed up bone bad for your dog? I would say probably not. I would say it's probably okay. What we're worried about is when we're cooking bone is a higher temperature of about 110, 120 degrees for a time, which, as Caroline mentioned earlier, creates a Maillard reaction. And that's where protein is changed. It changes shape. It essentially bonds it to a sugar, okay? And it makes it very hard to digest. You can see it happening when you overcook an egg or when you cook an egg from clear to white, or you overcook a steak and you're chewing your way through it like Caroline's dinner is going to be when she gets to it. So that overcooked meat is hard to digest because you bound the protein and you don't digest it very well. So that's a problem. It's kind of antigenic to the body. Now, you don't want to do that to bone, because bone we need to break down into mulch. Your dog's only got like half a ping pong ball of gut acid. And so you don't want to overcook that bone, make it hard to digest, because that's when he passes half digested splinters of uncooked bone to the intestines, and boom, you've perforation, impaction, a buildup on the motorway, all this sort of crap that happens with cooked bones. Very rarely raw bones. So in fact, I've never seen it, but so we know cooked bones is a problem, but I don't believe very lightly cooking a pre-made. That's a very controversial statement. But let's get into the supplementation. Let's say, okay, we've cut out bones, we're just using meat and veg. The temptation today is people say use a bit of ground eggshell at the rate of a level teaspoon per pound, okay? And people these days are saying seaweed with calcium in it. We use 13 different seaweeds across our supplements here, but I would look at calcium as just one tiny part of bone. Inside bone is all the things we just mentioned previously: glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen, hyaluronic acid, glucagon, glutathione. Bone is an amazingly complex, and then copper and selenium and all the other nutrients you're not going to get. So yeah, magnesium. So this sort of stuff bones are really, really important. And just putting in calcium really misunderstands how important bone material is. So what's the solution? Okay, I believe home cooked dinners absolutely fine, but you need to get into the fact that your dog needs to eat raw meaty bones. That would be one solution. If your dog had a nice home cooked dinner because you want to home cook his food, whatever, do you believe that he can have raw meaty bones? And that's an easier sell to people than eating a piece of chicken, because they think, oh, chicken needs to be cooked, but a raw meaty bone, oh, that's fine. That's because dogs always ate raw meaty bones, not understanding it's the exact same thing. And like, you know, to make people feel easy about it, like the dog buries a bone and digs it up a week later. I mean, that's honking piece of meat, and yet it doesn't knock him on his butt. That's enough bad bacteria to lay out a rhino, and yet your dog is fine because he's a different sort of animal to you are. So raw meaty bones with a cooked diet is great, but there's a new product out, and it's called MCH calcium, and it comes from New Zealand, and it's disgustingly expensive, but it's beef bones that have been powdered, and it's powdered beef bone essentially. So as long as your dogs are okay with beef, you can buy MCH calcium, which is a fantastic calcium supplement, which now at least has cartilage and bone and stuff in a powder, and you put it in. It's still ultra processed bone, but it's processed minimally at minimum temperatures, pulverized, and all the other insane things. It's poor man's substitute to bone, but it's a step above eggshell in my opinion. And then you could add that to your mixes at whatever quantity they tell you to do it at, as long as your dog can have beef. But if your dog can't have beef, what's the solution, Caroline? Where are you on all this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've gone down similar routes to you. I even looked at bone broth thinking, wow, this might be the solution.
Yeah, I hoped.
It's not. So there's very little calcium, actually, and let alone some of the other ingredients. So there's great stuff in bone broth, but very little mineral content.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
I got excited about that. So interesting you mentioned New Zealand, because at some point this year, I stumbled across a fish bone meal product.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was also made in New Zealand, and I did pester them, but they will not ship it. So unless we all fly there and come back with a load,
I did think about that. And so the dream is that they're just using fish frames. Is that what they're doing? They're taking the waste from the fish industry and then they're making
right. Yeah, as far as I understood, yes, it was, yeah.
Cool. And like, will fish cartilage, because they're not bony animals, Is that as good as, am I still getting all the stuff that I'm trying to think about?
When we put the nutrient profile that they gave us, Katie and I, we've worked together a lot. When we put it into the formulator that she has, it was coming up pretty good.
Great.
In terms of what their analysis was, anyway. But getting it over here is, So
well, you have a Brexit related problem for getting that stuff in, but maybe Europe can get it in. But I've also tried to get things in, like, but bone material and stuff. Almost impossible to get across borders. They hate it. You need some customs nerd that sits on these things for a week that does it, and that's not me. The level of paperwork to get bone material across, particularly into EU, the EU is terrified of bone material since BSE. UK and Europe are just terrified of that. So transferring bones, no matter how processed, is a thing. So yeah, I don't know. The fish bone is that's an interesting little solution there. I like that.
I actually didn't think that's why they won't be bringing it in. But with it not being bovine, maybe there's a chance that it needs more people to put in a much bigger order.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We can team up, and then we can make millions. I think the fish thing is interesting. I'd like to know that, like, fishes aren't bony animals, and so it has calcium in it, I assume, because my dog poops bullets if he eats too many fish heads. So I'm sure that's a calcium thing. I haven't thought about this enough. This is a great idea. Good. So anything like that would be great. There isn't really a product available like that. There's one guy in Germany selling the MCH calcium at the moment, and you can buy it by the 100-gram bag, and it's quite pricey. So it's like I would say, guys, please feed raw meaty bones. And people would say, how much raw meaty bones do I feed? Well, I would say, the dream is that the raw meaty bones are 10% of your dog's diet. Okay, so if you're feeding 90% meat and whatever you cook yourself in the pot, then 10% of his diet has to be meaty bones. So if your dog is eating, a kilo a day, for the sake of the maths, then he's eating 900 grams of your mix, and it would be great if he had 100-gram meaty bone to eat every day, or a 200-gram meaty bone every second day, or 300-gram twice a week. And that'll do the job grand. Like the way animals will walk a very long distance for a salt lick. It doesn't need to be every day, these nutrients. It's not an everyday thing at all. I mean, we go weeks without. People live on potatoes and rice and, for a long periods of time to get through bad situations, and they're okay. It's not ideal, but this idea that you need this complete food, how spoiled are we that we need every nutrient on the planet in every single bite? It's just an incredible job. But
in the human supplement world, you can get really bioavailable calcium.
I bet.
Available in the animal feed regs for.
Oh, that's interesting.
So so that seaweed you mentioned, that's interesting. Lithanarium, I think it is.
Yeah.
That went in a vegan fresh food that I helped somebody create called Dog Good, and it's the only fresh vegan dog food out there. And I took the stance, I said no to the job at first, but then afterwards I thought to myself, do you know what? If anyone's going to help him, it should be somebody like me. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'll work with you. Given that people that feed vegan dog food are just almost harder to convince than vets on certain subjects. So better that they feed fresh and at least get all the antioxidants and at least get all the omegas in there and all the other bits and pieces. So we created this, and it took a while, but we ended up using some of that seaweed for the D, because a lot of vegan dog food isn't actually vegan, because the only allowed substances, apart from that seaweed, which we slipped through the net unbelievably. We convinced ourselves it wasn't going to be allowed, but of course it was. So the only other one is actually from sheep. So it's some kind of lanolin or something. Take it from the fat or something like that. So, when you've got and I can't say this definitively, but I'm pretty sure that you've got certain brands that have got cans of vegan dog food and they say they are, but actually there's no way they're getting the vitamin D in, because they're standard premixes in from standard premix companies who will be using that version, the only one allowed version they can use. So they
interesting.
We threw this this seaweed into the mix, you see, when we were dealing with the supplement company, the premix company, and they thought we were crazy. And we had to really convince them that actually, yes, it is allowed, and yes, it does have high amounts of vitamin D. So, yeah.
Interesting. That's interesting.
You learn a lot doing this job you do.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, the whole vegan thing is just so tricky. I think it's tricky, and there's a whole another industry that's vegetarian for 10 years. I'm slightly back on the meat. That's the power of a good book there, Deep Nutrition. Have you read that, by Catherine Shanahan? Get it on Audible. It's a monster of a book. But oh my God, what a book. She divides it into 4 sections, and you're just, every paragraph you're stopping going, I just don't believe it. So she just said, take for example a vegetarian with a bad knee. That's me. And so I was playing sports a lot, and then my knee goes, I get it fixed, and my knee goes and I get it fixed, and then it went really badly the third time. And that's the end of pivoting. And so I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I was doing my exercise in the gym. I was pretty fit, I thought, at the time. And eventually, on the third time, I had this guy, Burke, who fixes all the knees of fancy people, and I've health insurance, so I got him. And he eventually just turns around and he goes, what sort of diet have you got? And I'm like, not great, but, pretty good. I'm thinking pretty good. Like, I do a lot of nutrition stuff, so I consider myself pretty. And he goes, you're not vegetarian, are you? And I went, yeah. And he goes, where do you get your glucosamine and chondroitin and collagen from? And I'm like, I'm trying to think, I make some myself. And he goes, oh, tiny bits. He goes, but when you're rehabbing from a knee operation, where are you going to get it from? And I'm like, and he goes, have you never taken glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen supplements, hyaluronic acid? And I'm like, these are all the words I use constantly on a daily basis for dog owners. And I never once thought to apply it to myself. And Shannon just highlights it in a paragraph. She just goes, this is why we struggle to, and it's not that we can't. So I'm trying to say this because I sympathize with vegetarians and vegans about their chosen lifestyle. I totally get it. But I totally believe the dog is also a media. And while I think that it is, if I was going to design a vegan food, I would want you on board to do it. And I think it's very lucky that company had you on board. So that's at least a good thing. But unfortunately, it's the nonsense that some vegan pet food brands are pushing that's confusing the people, and they're spending millions on this marketing, and these Facebook ads are hitting people all the time, and some top vets are backing it. And it's like, no, you can't back it as evidence. You have to say, okay, we understand this is the best we could make you for your vegan fed dog. Okay. But to say that science is favoring this decision is just like, well, no, we don't. It's not saying yes, it's not saying no. So, but the ads are, it is, and it's like, ooh, the Vet Times ran a front page article on a survey of 100 vegans, and the 100 vegans said, yeah, we think the dogs are living longer, and they put that on the front page of Life, nearly 2 years longer. And it's like a survey of vegans. What do you think they were going to say about their dogs? You asked me if my dog is healthy. You think I'm going to say he's not?
Actually, the vegan study that was done is on the Naked Dog blog as well, because I put on the blog. It's bloggers, not blaggers. So nice. It's the science. It's only science. So if you want to download science that you can print out, and it's putting studies into easy to read fashions that show that fresh food is better for various different reasons, or raw food even at times. And that vegan study was so interesting because there were 7 parameters, and 3 out of the 7 vegan dog food was top. So you had vegan dog food processed, you had processed meat-based dog food, and you had raw
meat-based.
Now the meat-based didn't come top on any. That was like the ultimate no. So raw came top on 3 of the parameters of the 7, and vegan came top on 3 of the parameters. So we're at an equal footing. Then on the 7th one, the vegan just in the stats just comes out top. So it's very, very close.
Yeah.
And that one was the vet's opinion of whether the dog was healthy.
Oh yeah. Oh, and the key words there being opinion. It's like those studies, they're not worth anything. That's like on the pyramid of useful science, okay, which you've got your RCTs that you've heard of. We all learned these words now in the last couple of years. Randomized controlled trials, really gold standard studies. And then you percolate down to these case control studies, and down. And then you've got survey. A survey is, Caroline, do you think Naked Dog is good food? And you're like, yeah. Do you think it's one of the best? Yeah. God, there you go. So Naked Dog's one of the best foods. It's like, okay, It's ridiculous. If you ask somebody, if you're into cycling, it is the best sport for you. If you're into boxing, it's not bad for your head. Like, it's, of course, that's what the survey is going to say. And if you ask vegans, is vegan food good for their pets? And they're feeding it to their pets, they're not going to turn around and go, no, I think it's slowly poisoning them. Like, who's going to say that? Even though you've chosen and you're feeding it because you believe it works. And then you ask them and you go, yeah, I do believe it works. It's ridiculous. And these surveys make it to the front of the page, not the case-controlled studies that show meat-based food is better for dogs than virtually vegetarian, a cereal-based pet food, or meat-based diets, as they call them in the studies. They don't make it to the front page. Our giant safety surveys of 16,000 pet owners, which results in millions of dog years because they've got multiple pets over the life of the person, and on and on and on. Huge study. Very safe thing to do to feed raw dog food. 3 possible cases in all those years. And it's like, in fact, possibly a protective effect from eating raw dog food with your pets, from a share of biome and utensils and all sorts of stuff you don't want to get into. But it's like, you know, people living near the Ganges and having that religious festival, and they're drinking the Ganges water and they're washing themselves. And then a Westerner, my mate, goes over there and they said, do not drink the Ganges water. And he's like, well, everyone else is doing it. He took like a shot of Ganges water and he had dysentery for like 4 weeks. He nearly died in the hospital. And that's because the locals have built up a tolerance to this sort of stuff. You are alien to the environment, and it's like, you're going to get hammered, War of the Worlds type thing. So anyway, I'm going mad. This is very interesting, Caroline. I've written down some gems here, particularly angry and happy. Yeah, it has gone on. Angry and happy water I've written down here. So I'm going to be Googling now.
I love that. Okay, just check if there's any other burning questions. I think I don't think there's any questions. People having good old chats, which is good. Yeah, and some people I really love on this. That's really cool. Yay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me again. They get enough of me, my students. They listen to me all the time. So
I love this. I hear nothing but good things about you, Caroline. I swear to God. I know 3 people on the course, and they are constantly, like, a lot of people say, what course would you recommend? And that is the only thing I say. I say, I don't know any other courses. I've looked into a few of them. I said, but anytime I talk to the people that are doing your course, they speak so highly of it. You work them hard, which I like to hear. And there's good, tough assignments. And it's like, go off and think for yourself on that one. And it's like, I love that. Now you're talking, not some spoon-fed nonsense from the 1990s. And it's like, so whatever you're doing is the top, and it's very it's going to make a big difference, because you're going to put very clued in people out there. So hats off to you. Fair play. It's a tough gig you're doing. That's a hard job. It's so fair play. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, just to finish, I will say just a shout out to Holly, who is one of my students, and she has been picked to be on the panel. She's the only member of the public that has been picked to be on the panel with Nick in his Vermex Raw
good
panel.
Good.
So he's got Holly, he's got the Vermex lady, he's got himself, of course.
Yeah.
And I think there's somebody else from another company, like anyway.
Yeah.
Holly can write it on the comments.
Good on you, Holly. Well done.
Amazing. Really pleased for her. And we can all watch that soon, this raw panel.
Yeah.
Raw feeding panel that's been put together by Vermex. I don't know the date at all, but
I don't know about either.
No. So yeah, we'll post about it on the page. Yeah. So thank you for watching, everybody. Yeah, this has been a monster live. Like,
I love it.
For over a month, and then when he was here,
I
just gone on and on. So thanks so much for watching, sticking with us, and for being part of another Naked Truth episode. We have our Naked Truth episodes, all of them in the past as well, because Connor's been here before, actually, and so have lots of dead interesting people on our YouTube, and some of them are still uploaded to the actual Facebook main page, Naked Dog. So do check those out as well if you want to, and don't forget about our new product, the answer. Yes. The answer to the question of what do you add to an 80-10-10. Okay, thank you, Connor.
Well, Caroline, pleasure. I will talk to you again very soon, as soon as I find out about this water and a few other bits and pieces. So,
okay. All right then.
All right. Take it easy, guys. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.